Hello and welcome. This is the last in our series of international focus webinars, where we've been speaking to some specialist lawyers from some of our best friend firms from around the world, looking at key developments and opportunities in the higher education sector in their jurisdictions. The eagle-eyed among you may have spotted that I'm not Martin Priestley, who was billed to be chair of today's session. I'm Jennifer Lewis. I'm a senior real estate lawyer here at Mills & Reeve, specialising in the education sector, and Martin sends his apologies. He is by coincidence, given the topic he is today, in Southeast Asia. But today I'm delighted to be joined by Alan Adcock, who is a partner at one of our best friend firms in Southeast Asia, Tilleke Gibbins. Alan's going to talk for about 20 minutes or so about the higher education market in Southeast Asia, with a focus on issues relevant to UK universities, and then there will be time for your questions at the end. A couple of housekeeping points. As with the other sessions, this is being recorded, if you can put your questions, please, you can type them at any time into the Q&A box. If we don't get to your question during the session, we will try and follow up with you afterwards. And you'll receive a follow-up email after the session. It will include a link to the recording. Also, we'd also be grateful for some feedback on the session, so watch out for that coming through. So by way of introduction, Mills & Reeve have a long and established relationship with Tilleke Gibbins, which spans several decades. We've worked collaboratively alongside them for many years across their offices in Southeast Asia, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Alan today. Alan Adcock is a partner in Tilleke Gibbins' regional intellectual property and regulatory affairs groups, helping to oversee the firm's client work in these areas across Southeast Asia. He's recognised as a leading intellectual property lawyer based on his handling of corporate IP matters, including licensing and acquisitions, and his knowledge in the life sciences and education sectors, fluency in Mandarin, and outstanding client service. Since 2005, Alan has received recognition by Asia Law Leading Lawyers as one of Asia's leading business lawyers in the area of intellectual property. And he's been named as a top IP lawyer in Thailand by the Legal 500 Asia Pacific and WTR 1000. Alan is also recognised as a leading IP strategist by IM Strategy 300, an expert on patents in IM Patent 1000, one of the world's foremost life sciences practitioners by IM Life Sciences 250, and a leading life sciences regulatory lawyer by Who's Legal. Alan has assisted many of the world's leading education sector brands enter and thrive in the Southeast Asian markets, helping them achieve dual goals of profit and protection. He has extensive experience with education IP acquisitions, strategic structuring, technology transfer, and IP licensing and securitization agreements. So, Alan, are there any key developments or issues in, I know you're based in Thailand, but you're also speaking about Vietnam as well today. So are there any key developments or issues in Thailand and Vietnam that are worth highlighting for our universities here in the UK?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate the opportunity that you and Sarah and Martin and many other colleagues at Mills & Reeve have given Tilleke Gibbins the opportunity to speak to your very distinguished client list. And Sarah showed me some of those registered attendees before the start of this morning's conversation, or this afternoon for me. So again, with Tilleke Gibbins, thanks. We appreciate the opportunity very much. As luck would have it, you mentioned that Martin Priestley is in Singapore. Just last week, Martin visited our office here in Bangkok. Martin's a partner in your Leeds office, and he was joined by one of your London office partners, Adrian Luto. So, you know, absolutely, if Martin had originally, the plan was us to sort of sit together and do this together, but he had client work down in Singapore. So very happy to have you lead this afternoon. One of the things that I did is I did a little bit of in order for me to better prepare for this quick discussion, one of the things I did was I went around to a lot of our local partners and some of our foreign partners to get their ideas on, you know, why they made their decisions for further higher education outside of Thailand and Vietnam, and how they're making their decisions on their children's further education outside of Thailand and Vietnam. So I'm going to try to share some of those sort of anecdotal reasons later on in the discussion, but I thought it might be helpful if I first just told your audience about a little about some of the logistics in Thailand, some of the numbers, the population, educational spend, and things like that. Thailand has a population of 70 million people. Vietnam has a population of 100 million people. To compare that with one of our other Southeast Asian jurisdictions, Indonesia, there's 250 million people. Now, the majority of those populations are all very young people. I think about Thailand is about 35 to 40% of the population is under the age of 20. Vietnam has a population under the age of 20 about 25%. So it's a huge market for educational industries and higher educational and tertiary educational service providers. In terms of per capita income, Thailand is between $4,000 and $12,000 per year. That was a 2021 figure. Vietnam has gone up really, really quickly in terms of per capita income. In 2005, average per capita income in Vietnam was about $700, and it's over $7,000 as of last year. And while government spending on education in Vietnam is a little bit lower than it is here in Thailand, Vietnam spends about $2.5 billion on education as compared to Thailand, where we spend about $12.5 billion. Vietnam percentage of GDP spending on education is just a little bit higher than Thailand's. Vietnam percentage of GDP earmarked for education is 6.8%, while Thailand is at 5.8%. Now, given the interest in studies abroad, and it's very, very interesting for higher education students here in Southeast Asia, and also, for younger students as well, together with sort of a general perception here in this region that overseas education is more advanced than other opportunities here in Southeast Asia, our firm, we see a lot of opportunity in the industry here in the region. I thought I might just talk quickly about maybe some of the establishment options for higher education players in the UK in terms of expanding their businesses into Southeast Asia. I will have to say that the establishment of actual branch foreign universities, both in Thailand and in Vietnam, it can be somewhat more time consuming. And it'll probably involve more government and ministerial licensing and permitting issues than probably in other more developed jurisdictions. If you are thinking about setting up a local branch of a foreign university in both Thailand and Vietnam and elsewhere in Southeast Asia, you should generally factor on that process from start to finish to take between 1.5 to 2 years. I mentioned the rather complex myriad licensing and permitting architecture around getting the permission to run a foreign educational institution here in Southeast Asia. You're talking about things like your basic investment registration permits, getting permission from the local boards of investments or the ministries of commerce, actual permits to operate, a higher educational institution, or even, K through 12 branches of foreign schools. Also things like land use permits, building construction license, and things like that. So those sorts of things can take maybe a little bit more time than some of your clients might be used to in more developed jurisdictions. Now, as an alternative to actually setting up branches of famous and foreign universities here in Southeast Asia, alternative models would include things like possibly acquiring an existing educational business and then transforming that or converting that into a wholly foreign-owned educational business or a joint venture educational business. That way, a lot of the license might already be in place. That way, some of the permits might just be transferable from the current domestic owner or the current foreign owner to a new foreign owner or a new joint foreign and domestic owner. Other sorts of models that we see really a lot of here in Southeast Asia, particularly in the past 15 years that I've been practicing here in Southeast Asia, is franchising. Or sometimes if you don't want to call it a franchise model in order to navigate around possibly local pesky franchise rules and regulations, a licensing model coupled, with an ongoing management services agreement or something like that. So, choices being establishment of branch office, of branch universities, acquiring existing educational businesses, franchising models, or licensing coupled with management services. And I just wanted to, at least in terms of where I'm sitting today, Bangkok, in terms of Thailand, if UK universities are thinking of setting up one of these a branch university a branch of their foreign university here in Thailand. At least a few months ago, we had our Ministry of Commerce and the Board of Investment announce a really new sort of long-term resident visa as a part of, probably a very global sort of phenomenon now, where post-pandemic, a lot of governments are trying to encourage technology industries, or particularly those individuals who have technical expertise that maybe are lacking domestically. In Thailand, just a few months ago, about 3 months ago, the Ministry of Commerce, they established what we call the long-term resident visa. And basically that gives you, or your staff or your colleagues, or if you have some of your professors at your universities who want to do and maybe a secondment opportunity at an existing Southeast Asian university, this new Thailand long-term visa is really interesting. So it basically is a 10-year visa with a lot of preferential income tax rates. For example, if you are granted one of these brand new, it's only 3 months old program, a long-term resident visa, income tax for that foreign expert, be them, working in a Thai business, or be them working for your branch university business here, or be them working in a Thai company or a Thai university in conjunction with your university, that income tax reduces from what I have to currently pay, which is 35% of my salary, to an income tax of only 17%. So it's a really interesting incentive. And again, it's a 10-year visa. It's not have to go back to the immigration department every year like I have to. As of September the 1st, just a few months now, there have been nearly 2,000 registered and granted Thailand long-term resident visas. Predominantly, those have been going, and in this order, mostly to the Americans, number 1, the Chinese, number 2, the British, number 3, and then the 4th spot are the Germans. So in addition to that, it also comes with certain other sort of tax exemptions for the business that is set up here, which employs that foreigner under the long-term resident visa. So that would be things like tax exemptions for up to 13 years as to the current 8 years. So that just shows how at least Thailand and many others, I know Malaysia is doing this, I think that Vietnam is doing this too, in terms of trying to attract expert foreign talent here to the region. So I think those are some of the issues that are worthwhile as we start the conversation tonight.
To collaborate with partners in Thailand or Vietnam, what the opportunities, what are the risks for them?
I think, again, as I was doing my little sort of informal straw poll the past couple of days, speaking to Thai colleagues and Vietnam colleagues who have had the opportunity to either they themselves study overseas, or they're now having the opportunity to send their children for study overseas. Some of the things that really stood out to me in terms of some of the things that it makes it very attractive to study overseas, and particularly in the United Kingdom, include things like credit transfer programs. And that's where, for example, you might be able to attend a degree granting university where maybe 1 year is spent locally in a local Southeast Asian university, which has a very close collaboration relationship with a UK university. And then the remainder of the degree granting program can actually be spent overseas in the UK. Those are called credit transfer programs. And those seem to be very, very important and very helpful for Southeast Asian students when they're trying to make their decisions as to which universities to go to. I mentioned collaborative research and development agreements. Many of the R&D universities here in Southeast Asia have fantastic laboratory facilities. They have fantastic postdoc student programs. They have, really lucrative and very well-funded research programs and research grants from other private industries, locally, domestic private industries, or private industries from abroad. So collaborative R&D relationships between a foreign university and a local Thai university, that's a really interesting model or a preliminary model to sort of get the collaboration moving and to get both sides to know each other, which then after, a collaborative R&D opportunity, that could maybe then progress maybe a year or so later onto a secondment of professors. We've seen a lot of that in the past few years, particularly just before the pandemic started, when people were able to freely move. So secondment of professors is also, we're seeing a proliferation of that, particularly in the Thai and the Vietnamese and the Indonesian universities. Something else that really came to mind when we were speaking to colleagues in several of our offices here in Southeast Asia, in terms of how UK universities can build up their own branding in order to encourage more interest in attending the UK universities there in the UK, are these alumni networks. Now, I'm an American, and I know for a fact that my alumni network is really very well organized here in all of Asia. I did my law at Syracuse and at Columbia Law School. Both of those universities, their alumni networks here are very well organized. We meet up a lot. Whenever other alumni are in town, we'll have a meeting, maybe some drinks or something like that. Those alumni networks are also regularly relied on in terms of when the universities themselves are coming to Asia or to our jurisdictions of Southeast Asia, when they are setting out like local educational fairs or recruiting visits. I particularly remember I was asked by Columbia Law in 2019 to go and give a talk and to man the booth here in Bangkok when they were coming to introduce and further sort of sell their LLM program. So alumni networks supported by local educational fair and recruiting visits, it's probably a really interesting way to further establish collaboration between UK universities and the local universities here regionally. Another thing that might be of interest is the opportunity or the possibility of actual like UK businesses endowing visiting chairs or something like that at the university level. I remember many years ago when I was in China, Bayer, German chemical pharmaceutical company, they set up a visiting German university chair at Fudan University in Shanghai. And because Bayer set up that endowed chair at Fudan University, that really helped Bayer and the Chinese government, particularly the Shanghai government, get to know each other better. So the possibility of maybe businesses setting up visiting chairs at local universities here in Thailand or Vietnam, that could be a consideration as well to further get both sides to know each other. Risks, particularly if you're thinking of maybe a franchise model or a licensing model, or if or even if the model is actually an extension of building a branch of the UK university here in Southeast Asia, good due diligence on these potential partners is very important. Due diligence here in Southeast Asia is not as tricky or as complex or as time consuming or as expensive as it's been in the past. Everything is digitalized now. You're able to search local business records, local graduation certificates, tax records, court records. You can ask your local Southeast Asian partners to respond in a great detail in terms of how they must be able to sell themselves to be the right partner for the UK universities to select. So those are some of the things that at least here within Tilleke Gibbins we thought might be of interest to the attendees tonight, in order to further build their brand, in order to further figure out whether or not there might be opportunities here. But at least something we want to draw everyone's attention to is the very important issue of conducting proper due diligence on any of your partners before you actually make the decision to invest. So,
sorry, I was just going to say, absolutely, I totally agree with that. And it's interesting, I think what you were saying about the alumni networks, it sort of ties into my next question, I think, about, how are UK universities perceived in Thailand and Vietnam, and how best might we foster our relationships? I mean, I suppose establishing or putting more work into those kind of alumni networks might be part of that answer.
Yeah, I think that's very good. I mean, again, with apologies, I'm an American, so I'm quite familiar with a lot of the American university alumni networks, but I know that they are several of the British counterparts to those all over Southeast Asia. One thing that I did see when I was preparing for tonight's discussion is there was this November 2021 British Council report. Maybe Jennifer, you might be familiar with it. Maybe some of your clients might be familiar as well. It's a British Council November 2021 report called Measuring the Cultural Divide. How does interest in overseas culture affect Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines study decisions? And so in the question in terms of to what percent of the people that they were interviewing, I think it was around 2,500 per jurisdiction, the interest in overseas culture, it was quite different, with Thailand only about 35% being interested in overseas culture, with the Philippines being about 89%. And I found that very interesting. So at least in terms of maybe which of the jurisdictions in Southeast Asia, UK universities might be more aligned with in terms of expanding their business. It seems, at least according to this British Council 2021 study, Thailand students seem to be a little less interested than other markets in Southeast Asia. At least for those 6 jurisdictions, Thailand interest in overseas culture in terms of their being able to make overseas study decisions. It was Thailand coming in at 35%, Indonesia at 42%, Malaysia at 82%, Vietnam at 83%, Singapore at 86%, and the Philippines at 89%. Some of the positive perceptions that we hear of in terms of how particularly Thai and Vietnamese students might choose the UK for higher educational opportunities as opposed to other jurisdictions around the world. The UK is known as, it's very highly respected, higher education system, top ranking universities, great emphasis on practical skills, critical thinking, quality professors, but also the facilities. Thai and Vietnamese students are probably going to be looking at the UK in terms of other jurisdictions for higher educational opportunities, in terms of safety. It's probably considered as being less expensive in the United States, though there are also fewer scholarship opportunities for Southeast Asian students than possibly might be available to those same students in the United States. Something else that I heard from several of my partners in Vietnam and Thailand offices was that the UK seemed to be very interesting and very exciting for students because, as I understand it, it's a 3-year undergraduate degree program as opposed to a 4-year undergraduate degree program in America, Thailand, and Vietnam. So that seems to be, a really positive perception in the minds of Southeast Asian students. We've even had other partners who said that they prefer the UK over other jurisdictions because of the direct flights, transportation from Southeast Asia. The UK is really, really convenient. Really, it's a lot closer. And also for Thailand, there seems to be a sense of closer cultural and historical ties. And a lot of my Thai partners said that was especially through the respective royal families. And Thailand has a very long history of the Thai royals and the British royals have a long history of helping each other out. And, the Thai royals going to the UK for higher education for, hundreds of years. So that also seems to play in the minds of at least Thai students when they're making decisions on UK higher education opportunities as opposed to others. On the negative side, cost. It's always going to be more expensive outside of Southeast Asia than it is here in Southeast Asia. But the positive versus the negative, absolutely. There's a lot more interest in some of the positive perspectives of studying the UK as opposed to other jurisdictions.
No, that's really interesting. Thank you. And as a real estate lawyer, I liked your mention of the attractiveness of the facilities in the UK as well. So that's always good. My next question is around other jurisdictions. I know that obviously UK is I think probably one of the most common, but what other jurisdictions are active in the higher education sector in Thailand and Vietnam?
Yeah, we did a little research on that question as well. It seems that by far the UK remains the most interesting and the most common jurisdiction for overseas higher education, both in Thailand, Vietnam, and in Indonesia as well. Our partners were telling us there. After the UK, it seems to be followed by Australia. Australia has a lot of interesting branch university opportunities here in Southeast Asia. There in Malaysia, there's Curtin University. There's Monash University in Malaysia. Swinburne University has an operation in Malaysia. In Vietnam, Australia again is making a very strong showing. The RMIT, the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, has branch campuses both in Ho Chi Minh City and Da Nang. Also with Australia overseas education opportunities, Australia seems to be a overseas education jurisdiction where it seems to be a little bit easier to post-graduation. You can stay on and get some longer temporary work permits. And we know that many Southeast Asian graduates from Australia, they actually stay on in Australia to seek permanent residence or citizenship. Monash University also has a branch campus in Jakarta in Indonesia. In Singapore, there's James Cook University. For the European universities, INSEAD has a really successful and a really popular MBA program in Singapore. It's top ranked. And also a lot of consulting firms, they sponsor their management consultants to do their MBAs there in Singapore also. So in addition to, well, UK being the most popular, followed probably by Australia, also a lot of opportunity for the Canadian universities, the Korean universities, and also increasingly the mainland China universities. And that's owing to, a lot of historical and cultural closeness between Southeast Asia and China, and also because China's heavy investment in the region most recently.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. I feel like this half an hour has sped by. I'm just going to very quickly just say, I want to draw out the benefits of the sort of cross-working between Tilleke and Gibbins and Mills and Reeve. I mean, obviously, it's a very close relationship, as we, Martin's over there at the moment. I just wondered if you had a couple of comments about that.
Well, as you said in the introduction, we've worked with Mills and Reeve for over 20 years now. I've personally worked with many of your partners since I joined Tilleke Gibbins in 2008. And our relationship, it sort of started off when both of our firms were active members in a global independent law firm association. I've spent the past day or two looking at some of the more educational sector matters that we have helped Mills and Reeves with over the past couple of years. That's included everything from advising on educational investment structuring and actual establishment, particularly in the Vietnam office. Also, other educational industry legal services that we provided to Mills and Reeve for your clients, advice on real estate, immigration, tax, of course. On my side, intellectual property, particularly patent prosecution and patent licensing, coming from UK R&D universities. There's been a lot of that in the past several years. So those are some of the opportunities that we've been lucky enough to have with Mills and Reeve in the recent past, and we certainly hope that we're going to be able to have some of those more opportunities in the future. And we definitely think education is something that's very important industry for you and your clients to further consider, scoping Southeast Asian opportunities. We'd be happy to help with any of that.